Okay, hey, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a fun little episode for you, part of a little sub segment of my normal videos, and it's a sponsored segment brought to you by Wrist Candy Watch Club. Yes, I don't do paid reviews, but I do sponsored content, so I can get some paid videos made just by sending a little shout out to those who want to support the channel. So Wrist Candy Watch Club is supporting the channel by sponsoring this particular episode of Wristwatch Rambles and Rants. And today we'll be discussing what I think are pretty much the two best Seiko divers you can buy for the money right now. Yes, there are more expensive divers there are cheaper divers, but for me, these two are kind of the pinnacle of what Seiko currently offers, and I'm a huge fan of both. Here on the left, you have, of course, your SBDC101 or SPB143, which is known as the 62 MAX, which is basically a 62 MOS or 62 MAS kind of modern reimagining. And then on the right, we have your SBDC127 or SPB189, which is your modern Marine Master diver style. So both of them are great. They pretty much cost exactly the same. They have the same specs, and they just have slightly different looks. And we're going to discuss that. I think that either of these could be considered kind of the best, the cream of the crop in terms of Seiko's current diver options that are readily available, kind of discounting any type of special editions that are out there, and some of the really complex high-end stuff when you start getting into the LX line of Prospex and of course Grand Seiko, or some of the really great limited reissues that are a little bit more true to their roots. Here I do like that idea of the modern reinterpretation, and it not just being kind of a reissue, but being more of a modern reimagining. So with that said, guys, what do you think when you see these two? Which one would you say is your pick for your collection? Are you thinking more on the Marine Master style or more on that kind of 62 MOS style? So we have, of course, the very first watch that pays tribute to the very first Seiko diver, and another watch that pays tribute to the very first Seiko professional dive watch. So with that said, let's zoom the camera out, get these pieces in hand, and take a closer look. All right, guys, so one thing you'll probably notice already that's a big difference is the bracelet, right? I mean, obviously the aesthetics and the cases they're also different, but the bracelets themselves are quite different. I want you to look at the way this bracelet can compress. You lay it flat and everything can lay very, very flat, as you can see there, right? This one, for me to actually get it to lay in the same way, I had to open the clasp because it doesn't lay as flat. It's because it just doesn't have the same level of articulation, which I thought it was interesting. Because of those angular shapes, it just can't articulate this to the same level. As you can see here, this can really get kind of tangled up, and it's just very, I guess, pliable, you could say, and flexible in terms of the links. They don't lock. They're very similar, if not the exact same, on the clasp, but the bracelet designs are quite different. As you can see, one being more rounded off, and then one with the more angular sections there. But in terms of thickness, another thing you'll notice that I thought was quite interesting is on your 62 MAX, you're getting a much thicker link, as you can see there. I wouldn't say maybe much thicker, but it is a thicker link. And the watch is actually thicker as well, which I thought was really interesting. So let's maybe take them both and put them on crown side. I'll try not to bang them together because that would be sad. Let me give it a quick wipe there. And as you can see, it's close in thickness. We got 12.5 versus something like 13 point whatever. I will say that the case back, as you can see, and the emblem, and then of course that protruding crystal do add a little bit more height here on the SBDC 101 versus, geez. It's funny, I think of this one in like the Japanese nomenclature, which is SBDC. Then I think of this one in the SPB nomenclature, which is the US, because I bought this one from a US dealer. This one actually came from Carrot & Co., which is an authorized Seiko dealer here in the US. And then I got this one from Sakura Watches, which is a great JDM dealer. So those are two great recommendations for you guys to source top quality Seiko divers, but not just divers, but they have tons of watches. But yeah, I think it's funny. So this, I think SPB 187, this I think SPDC 101, but it's also, this is SPDC 127, which is the JDM nomenclature, versus the international or USDM nomenclature of the SPB 143. So pardon me, I'll try to just call it 62 MAX versus Marine Master 200 or MM200 or MM42. I don't know if I'll call it the reduced. But basically, you're left and you're right. And comparing them, as you can see there, the dial to bezel ratios are even slightly different, which I find very interesting. The way that, of course, the bezel is a little bit thicker in terms of the surface area on your on the left here versus the right. Also, you're getting here that kind of that brushed and coated finish, as you can see, still engraved. And then here you're getting that glossy finish there. So very nice. And then also you have much finer teeth versus much larger teeth. And, you know, one of the beauties about these watches is that they're Seikos you don't have to mod. I love my Seiko mods. You guys look at my channel. I really enjoy a good SKX mod, let me tell you. But these ones, you don't even have to swap out the clasps, everything. You don't have to swap out the bracelets. It's just a really well-sorted, well-balanced package out of the box. Some of the differences when you see here, it's interesting the approach they take here. Much finer beveling, as you can see. Very nice. I mean, obviously these are executed to a very similar standard. Same brand, same kind of tier and pricing, same Dia Shield coating on the steel, but there you get the really fine style of bevel. Here you get the big fat traditional Seiko bevel, and man, it's gorgeous. Let's just face it. And the transition between brushed and polished is just right there. It just shows you that is just high definition. Ooh, I hate. That's the one thing that sucks about the high polished bevels, guys, is when I'm trying to review stuff, I'm seeing the little fingerprints and little oil here and there, and it's making me just want to wipe it all off. So sorry about that, but man, look at that. That's gorgeous. That's a lot of eye candy in terms of... Ooh. And then they both have drilled lugs, no sign crown. I mean, they're very, very evenly spec'd. Same movement, even similar color scheme, you could say, in terms of you have sunburst dials with black bezels, except you're getting here the bezel is textured versus glossy. And then you also get flat crystal versus that nice kind of vintage dome, which I think is really gorgeous. So either of these could be quite definitive. I could say that this is maybe the best dive watch for about $1,000 that's out there. But then this, I don't know, maybe this is like the best Seiko dive watch. So is that counterintuitive? Like, I mean, when I think Seiko and I think about their design language, clearly this watch and this case, 4 o'clock crown, it spawned and it influenced way more models. The 62 Mas, although it was very influential in that it was the first diver that Seiko created, ultimately a lot of the design language was lost until these reissues came out and modern reinterpretations. But I mean, a 3 o'clock crown on a Seiko diver isn't a common thing. It's a very common thing for other divers. And honestly, the kind of dial to bezel ratio on here is quite reminiscent of something like Black Bay 58 when you look at it, versus here This definitely has more of that Seiko language. I mean, it's very, very close to that kind of SKX vibe in terms of what you're getting. So I don't know, there's something that really plays for me and plays well and reads well, and overall, when you have the fact that this is you're getting a lot of different textures. You're getting the gloss, you're getting the dial, the color pop, also the little spot of red there on the seconds hand. You're getting these little bevels on these inner kind of squared off, which ties in kind of the angles with mixing with the round. It's a really nice, well sorted package, and I find it to be extremely handsome. The bezel action, very nice, very easy, dialed in, lines up great. Here, tighter action, but it's also a little bit stiffer because it's tighter. But it is tighter, but also lines up amazing. And is that always going to be the case? No. Which is why you have to find the right dealers and make sure that you are just asking for some pictures and asking some questions. And I was fortunate enough to get two really great examples of two watches that I really, really like, that are, pretty good in terms of alignment, whether it's the date window or the pip alignment. But speaking of date window, guys, look at the fine bevel on that date window on the gray versus on the blue. It's a pretty standard cutout, and it's just like, why couldn't they do the bevel? It just makes us feel a little bit more refined. From a dial execution standpoint. In terms of the actual application of the Lume, they're very, very similar, very close in terms of that. I would say that the handset, of course, on the blue dial, is going to be, it's wider, so there's more Lume, so it's probably going to be brighter. The bezel, when it comes to those pips, both of them are protected, which is great. I don't know if it's by Sapphire. They both do have Sapphire with inner AR coating, but the little pip at 12, it could be a piece of Sapphire, it could be a piece of Hardlex, doesn't matter. The great thing is it's going to protect your Lume from discoloring and staining, which is a real problem, honestly. So that's very, very nice. So yeah, I really love these two divers. But it's kind of hard for me to say which one I prefer more. I think this is an amazing diver for the money, especially at the size. And then this is kind of just an amazing Seiko diver for the money. Like, this shouts Seiko to me. This, of course, connoisseurs will see Seiko when they see this, but your average person is just going to see like clean, vintage inspired dive watch. They're going to see the lack of crown guards, the kind of that beautiful kind of vintage dome sapphire there, the president style almost links on here. It does have a very much of a retro vibe. Where here, I think it's a little bit more contemporary with the angles, the choices of finishing there. Oh man, the finishing is great. Look at the side of this case versus side of this case. They're both gorgeous. I mean, look at those lines, right? You get the top cut, you get the undercut, you get that beautiful strip of just excellent brushing. And then you got the same thing over here, but it's just in a totally different way. Look at how much thinner that is. This pulls off a lot more of those tricks that Seiko does with the curvature of the body, the undercuts, the way that it wraps around the wrist and still feels quite wearable even at a larger size. Here it's scaled down, but they use less of those tricks, so it ends up wearing actually pretty similarly, which is interesting. So, and not that, I think this is 40.5 millimeters and then 40 millimeters across the bezel. Here, this is a 42, pretty true and true. And then, you look at even the crowns, they might even be the same crown. They're just at different locations. So these are both pretty gorgeous, but let's get them on wrist and kind of see the variance in terms of the way that they wear. Okay, 7 1/4 inch wrist. You see, they both wear really quite well. Of course, up close, it's going to seem there'll be some lens distortion making it look a little bit larger, but when you get more wrist, a little bit more arm into the picture, you realize that, you know, I'm not just a floating wrist. There's a whole body attached here, and yeah, these things wear really beautifully. You can see not quite, I mean, although quite refined, the tapering and the undercutting, not quite. Excuse me, sorry about that. And appreciate the blessings in the comments. Ooh, a little cold while I'm recording this in the middle of the night. So really great. I mean, you can see, I love the lines. Again, though, it doesn't necessarily use as many of those trademark Seiko tricks, though, right? To pull off the size and make it feel a little bit more comfortable. Here, I mean, look at this thing. It's just wrapping around the wrist, very svelte, very, very handsome. A little bit brighter, a little bit just more playful with the light. Gosh, this thing is nice. It's a little darker. Even though this is very monochromatic, that gray dial, it just pops. It almost like a shade of like pewter to it, and it has a little bit of warmth, I'd say, that it adds, and it stands out, especially against this kind of soft background that I use. I think it brings out a lot of the warm tones in it. And this is a great, I look at this watch and I just think, do I really need anything else? I don't. But do I want anything else? Yeah. This one, I've been fiending after this watch for so long, but look at the way that it sits on the wrist. Look at, it's a taller, thicker bezel, but it also helps make the case look that much thinner. Look at let your eye follow that brushed line there with that undercut. It just makes the case seem so much thinner, and obviously it helps wonderfully when it comes to mobility, but even the visual play there, it just really does a great job of shrinking that watch down. Versus here, not quite the same story. There's definitely something to look at, visual play, but it doesn't necessarily help shrink the case down. It definitely has a bracelet that is more about, I think, feeling tough and kind of rugged and solid, purposeful. I love that about this, and it definitely has a more of a simple, very utilitarian look, but at the same time, you know, I can appreciate the little touches they did, because the original 62 MAS did not have any clean bevels. It was just pretty squared off and very simple and basic. Here they did some fine tuning to really show you know, what they're capable of. This, I'd say, execution wise, there's just for some reason there's some elements here I think they outweigh on versus the Marine Master 200 that just feel a little bit finer done, and I think it comes down to the bevel on or around that date window, as well as the choice of having kind of the coating still expose that brushing on the bezel insert. Also the more refined, oh man, look at those bevels versus here, although still extremely impressive. Yeah, I feel like the case might be finished better here, but then the dial might be finished better here, and then the handset are a toss up. So I don't know. Tell me, guys, what do you think? What's your pick? You going gray? You going blue? What you gonna do? You going Marine Master style? You going 62 MAS style? Which one's for you? Maybe you're gonna need to see the Lume to figure that out. So let's actually go ahead, get the Lume going too. All right, let's go ahead and hit the lights. Yeah, again, pretty evenly matched. I will say that the hands are a little bit fatter on the Marine Master, so maybe they're giving off a little bit more. But yeah, it's for me pretty dead even from this standpoint in terms of that Lume. So let's actually even see what we can do to work in some low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to be, you know, coming in out of a building, with less than perfect lighting, maybe walking underneath an overhang or underneath the shade of a tree, or just spending time in your favorite automobile. So I do like to kind of show what this, what the finish is, what the textures, what the color palettes will render like in less than optimal lighting. So I like to just do this little segment here called the low light transition. I even throw in some very high contrast lighting, which typically will expose, any type of, imperfections. But when you look at this, I mean, look at how uniform that brushing is, the way the light dances. That is very handsome. And you can see so many more textures over on the gray with look at the way the bezel plays with light and just holds it and grabs it. It just gives it a really special feeling versus you have a little bit more of that kind of classic glossy black bezel, very reminiscent of this finish of a glossy ceramic bezel insert, but this is a coated steel bezel insert. The dials just doing great things, playing with the light, holding the light in different ways. You can see there's a certain level of matte finish applied onto these dials, but there is that nice fine brushing which really tell the story. But as we kind of can pull out the light, you can see still quite legible, even transitionally, even with a couple little pops here and there. It's still, yeah, it's still plenty legible. But the way the light just, man, these things play, guys. These things play, and they play well. I'm a big fan of both of these watches. It's hard for me, guys. It's hard. It pains me. It absolutely pains me to try to think which one of these is the better watch. I don't know. I really, I enjoy them both. They're fantastic. They're definitely keepers, but I guess that doesn't mean too much considering like every watch that I have is a keeper. But at some point I'm gonna start selling these bad boys off, and these two won't be one of them. They'll be in, I kind of have built 3 watch collections around each watch. I don't have one 3 watch collection. I have like a bunch of 3 watch collections. I like that idea of the kind of diver dress, and general sports, kind of putting those things together. It's a cool idea. But yeah, for me, I guess maybe going back to what I said in the beginning of the video, the 101 being really the I'd say an amazing diver, while the 127 or 187, if we're going SPB, but from the SPDC 127 versus the SPDC 101, just left versus right. Now it's gray versus blue. Gray dial, amazing dive watch, and absolutely desirable by people who are probably not even that big Seiko fans. The blue dial, for me, I feel like might be slightly more desirable, but specifically for Seiko fans. Like if you love the SKX, if you love the Sumo, the Stargate, all these great models gone by that were really influenced by the Marine Master case and just the general design aesthetic, you will absolutely find this to be the joy of that circle, because it wears so beautifully and it just carries those iconic little earmarks of design. Now, that's not to say that the gray doesn't do a lot of that same. But yeah, again, it just feels like an awesome watch, but not necessarily. I mean, yeah, I guess it's 62 MAS is iconically a Seiko watch, yes, but did it influence very many Seiko divers after that? I'd say not as much, especially when you just go down to the basics of some people will only see a Seiko diver as one that has a 4 o'clock crown. Do I think that's the case? No, I don't know. It's all good. God, I'm rambling. But hey, you know who helped with that? Wrist Candy Watch Club by sponsoring this episode. So make sure to check them out. Show them some love. I don't I keeps it real, guys. I don't take payment and then just like say I love something. I'll take a little payment and do a little ramble and plug though. Where's Candy Watch Club? So with all that said, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Which model are you taking? You talking SBDC 101 slash SPB143 in that 62 MAX style, or are you thinking about the SBDC 127 slash SPB187 in that Marine Master Diver style? Marine, whether you want to call it the MM200 or the MM42. Let me know in the comments below, guys. I'm racking my brain here. I feel like if I was to guess, people are gonna dig that 101 more, just because it appeals to more broad era. But I think there will be more fanatics that are just overwhelmed and enthused by picking up this Marine Master, because we've waited so long for a watch like this to get that Marine Master style case and something that's really wearable, very modern. You know, this is the watch that we were building Seiko mods to look like for so many years, versus the 101, where it's excellent. Don't get me wrong, there's been probably quite a few Seiko mods that have tried to emulate that style as well. But ultimately, I think it's just a little bit more, I guess, more generic in a lot of ways. But that's what's nice. It's clean. It's classic. So a lot of people are going to like it. So maybe there's more people liking one, and then maybe more people loving the other, but less likes. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks, guys.